Hey there, welcome to Usually Wrong, episode number 55. This is with Sean Collier, which is a really good one. I'm excited for you to hear it. If you'd like to come see me do comedy, here are some dates. I will be this Wednesday at the Eastville Comedy Club in Brooklyn. That starts at 8 p.m. I'm doing a benefit show up in Lower Burl this Sunday, March 31st at 1 p.m., which should be fun. The Avalon Hotel Comedy Show in Erie, Pennsylvania. That is Friday, April 19th. And Comedy at Quinn Brewery in Irwin, PA. That's Saturday, May 11th at 8 p.m. So check all that stuff out. And a lot more coming up at natenolf.com. Tons of stuff. I'm really excited about it, actually. This is with Sean Collier, and it's a really good one. I've been trying to get him on for a while. Part of WDVE, stand-up comedian, absolutely hilarious. Rate the show 5 stars. Enjoy it. Yeah, that's it. Enjoy it. Enjoy Usually Wrong. Episode number 55 with Sean Collier.
When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that and forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You will be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living. That is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
And we'll go wherever we can find it. And that led to this place out here, and it was a really nice place. It was an okay deal, but then I got out here, and I just thought I can't be in the car, for, all day, every day like this.
I can't imagine even people in LA.
Yeah.
That has to be a million times worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I couldn't do it. I mean, I get antsy if my commute to and from work is more than 20 minutes.
Is that true?
Oh yeah.
Have you always been that way? Because I was not. I drive a lot for work now, and
Yeah.
I even find, like, maybe it's because of podcasts and stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can tolerate a car ride
No,
a lot better.
And the thing is, I don't mind being in the car at all. Like, I thought about it a couple weeks ago and realized that I'm usually like 8 places in the course of a day.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bother me. It's something about, those stretches where I'm, transitioning from I'm entering the day, and I'm kind of transitioning from work mode into the next time. If those hit half an hour of just sitting there, I'm either falling asleep or I'm anxious.
Well, I get that completely, and I could do my job from home, but there's something about being in this space and office space that separates the day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's even my relationship with my girlfriend too, because I live with my girlfriend, and it's if I am constantly doing work at home, it's almost it affects my relationship with her.
Sure.
I don't know what it is.
Sure.
But that I feel that a bit.
No, I prefer, now that I moved in with my girlfriend 6 months ago, and in my last house where I lived alone, I could kind of have an office and said, okay, this is where I go to work. But now I feel more comfortable doing stuff somewhere else, because this is the place where I relax.
Yeah.
So
are you from
there's something
Pittsburgh
to that.
originally?
Yeah.
You are. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the North Hills, and it was fine.
It was fine.
But even as a kid, I didn't like the suburbs. I didn't like.
Why?
Are
you more of a city person?
Yeah. I just want. I both want there to be some stuff that I can walk to, and I want to feel like I'm living in a neighborhood, but I also want to be able to have to be at work and a dinner meeting and then a movie I have to watch, and I want no part of that to be logistically challenging.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm moving at some point.
Yeah.
But the thing that draws me to the city and being so close to it, you're right, there's stuff to do.
Right.
All the time.
Right.
I grew up in Natrona Heights, which is years away from almost everything. And
Sure.
so you're contained
Right.
in there, and it's almost a feeling of being trapped in like a specific point. I never
Right.
felt that way, but I understand people who felt that way in that town. It was like, there's nothing to do here.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who I want to look for opportunities, not even just not professionally and comedy wise, but
Yeah.
things to do for leisure.
Yeah.
That's something that's important to me.
Yeah. And sometimes you make it to that thing once a year. But
Exactly.
it's nice to know it's there. It's nice to know that you could be doing that at any time.
I agree.
Right.
Thank you for doing this, by the way, too.
Sure.
I've heard a lot about you, and that's my favorite podcast episodes. Like, I don't know a lot about you.
Okay, good.
At all. How did you get into entertainment? Tell me everything. Let's
sure.
go through a life story.
I started doing theater when I was like 12.
Okay. Do you remember your first musical play?
Yeah, it was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor
true?
Dreamcoat through Act One Theater School in the spring of 1998.
So it wasn't like a high school thing. It was
No, I did some stuff at my high school, but I was pretty immediately like, oh, I'm serious about this. I need to take classes outside of school and do that kind of thing. And all through high school, I really wanted to be an actor, and I kind of did everything that you could possibly do to set myself up for that, and went to Penn State for theater, and that, through no fault of the college, that ended up pulling me out of it.
Why?
I was coming in as a kid, a male who looked and sounded a little bit older than I was, and I was not phenomenally talented, but I certainly could handle myself on stage.
Does the being older thing put you at a disadvantage? I've always heard in TV, it's if you look younger, you can play more parts.
Well, yeah, and it was always tough to figure out what role I was supposed to be playing, because I was like too baby-faced to be like, oh, make him the grown-up, but I had too much of an older carriage to be an 18-year-old.
Yes.
So what ended up happening, though, because I kind of knew what I was doing, was I was getting thrown in these plays as the soldier in the background constantly.
Oh, okay.
This show is mainly for the graduate students, but we need a couple extra people, and there's this part that comes on stage twice, and you can handle that.
This is high school.
This was in college.
This was in college.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In high school, you're hopping between those small ponds.
Yeah,
so no matter, you could be black, white, male, female, old, young, whatever it is, and if you're the talented one in this pool,
Yes.
you're playing Jesus in Godspell. But in college, it was like, you're good enough to serve this role literally, but that's about as good as you are. So I kept getting put in these shows that were not interesting and not fun, and it just became work. And as soon as it was like, oh, this is a job now, I was checking out.
Let me try and relate to you
Sure.
in the
Sure.
stand-up world. When I started, when I was in high school and college,
Yeah.
I like to say I was the funny person of my immediate friend group, right?
Right,
And then
right.
you get this ego about you. You are the funny person in the group. Oh, you should go do stand-up.
Yeah.
You would be great at it. And then I show up to Ham Bones the first time I do stand-up. It's like, oh, these are fucking professionals. Like, these are
Right.
people who have been in this crap, people who have been doing this a lot longer. I have a lot of work to do. Was it a similar thing?
Those revelations all came at points where I was starting to care less anyway.
Care less.
Yeah, so I remember realizing that I couldn't quite get by on the level of talent I had anymore.
Okay.
But at that time, I was feeling a little bit burned out. And then I remember maybe a year and a half later, a professor said to me, and this was such a kindness. He was like, "Okay, you're like a good college football player, and it's not obvious yet whether or not your skills will translate to the NFL." And at that point, it wasn't like, it wasn't, an upsetting thing to hear. It was like, oh, well, if that's where I am, that gives me permission to start doing something else. Because I'm not like in love with this enough to find out.
Were you
anymore.
looking for something like that at that time to pull you out of what you were doing?
Yeah,
was that kind of like
probably.
a godsend? Was it, I'm ready to move on from
Yeah.
something like this?
I think it was.
I get that. I get that completely. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm constantly waiting for things like that. Not like with stand-up and stuff, but something
you're waiting for the thing to crush you out of stand-up.
To tell me I'm out. I'm
Right.
done. It's not going to work. No, but I feel I completely understand that. I was waiting for that for cross country.
Yeah,
all
okay.
4 years of high school. I would
Right.
be like, "Oh, you're not good? Oh, maybe you should stop doing
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
So, okay. So go on.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So then
I interrupt a lot.
Then I was kind of done. Then I could do what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I started writing more, and I started messing around with directing a little bit.
Yeah.
And I eventually started doing improv.
What are you writing at this time?
At that time, it was like I had a kind of a whatever opinion column for the Daily Collegian,
Oh, okay.
and I was doing some magazine features for a magazine called Verbicide, which was like, barely it was like it was a zine that got big, basically. So some reviews and some opinion stuff, and started to like experiment with writing plays a little bit. But the big thing was that my last year of college, I started doing improv.
Okay.
And I loved that, and that ended up being a really good group where there are people who were on that team with me who are heavily involved at UCB now and have written for BuzzFeed, and that ended up being a really great group of funny people.
When you were acting, did you want to do improv? Or as an actor, did you see improv as something lesser, not an art?
I don't think I knew enough about it to
have an opinion.
To have a form. Like, I knew there was improv comedy that happened places, and I knew that was related to some of the stuff I learned when I was first taking acting classes, but that was about as far as it went. And then I saw, what the group there was doing, and I immediately wanted to audition.
Yeah.
And had a really great year plus with those guys. It was called Full Ammo Improv Troupe. I think they're probably still at Penn State now.
Yeah.
And came home when I graduated. It would have been 2008. And this is completely different from Pittsburgh now. At the time, there was no improv for me to do.
In Pittsburgh?
No.
When was this?
2008.
2008.
That's when I
Okay.
graduated college in 2008. And there was it was kind of the dying days of Friday night improvs at Pitt, which is part of the DN.
I don't know anything about that.
That was just an improv and theater games night that happened at Pitt for probably 20 or 30 years, and that makes up part of the DNA that leads to arcade comedy theater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But it was the dying days of that. There was one long form improv group called Hustlebot, and that was about it. There's a short form team that still exists called the Cellar Dwellers that performs, I think, in I want to say Butler County.
Okay.
But there weren't classes. There was no arcade. There was no Steel City Improv Theater. There was nothing going on. And around that time, I got to know Gab Benesso a little bit.
Really?
And she said, "Hey, you should try some stand up."
I'm always interested in those stories about how you get into stand up and who encourages you. Joe Marchi, I grew up right down the street from him. He went to the Catholic school adjacent to my public school.
Okay.
And at the time, I was working a life insurance job. I still am, but it was a different company, and it was like you find your own names.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down with Joey at a Panera Bread in Oakland, and I wanted to sell his parents insurance.
Yeah.
And so I said, "What are your parents up to?" He's like, "Nothing." Anyway, I'm starting to host this open mic at Hambo, and so I'm like, "Oh, I should do that.
Yeah.
That would be fun." I'm always interested in those kind of stories.
It was, not to, and that sounds like I'm like, stand up was the backup, but it really was. I wanted to do improv.
Which
I
is
couldn't.
nothing wrong with that too.
Yeah, I wanted to do improv and I couldn't, and I still wanted to be funny on stage, and I had gotten to know Gab a little bit, and she told me to try it out. The first couple times I went up, it was like a high concept improv thing.
Yeah.
Where I was already kind of a movie guy and trying to be a movie critic, so I would go up and I would just, the game was that, the audience called out movies they liked, and no matter how I felt about them, I just had to tear them apart.
You had to tear them
right.
apart. Oh,
and
that's fun.
that was like the first 4 or 5 times I got on stage, and then I was like, wait a minute, if I can come up with stuff that's funny beforehand, that's probably a more solid move.
Yeah. So, but when are you wanting to be funny as a entertainer? So you're in acting, which I don't know what kind of parts you did, but like when was it that you said, okay, being funnier is more of something I want to do rather than just act?
It was on the improv team.
It was the improv team.
That was, just the finding the joy in being able to really make an audience laugh came from there. Having said all of that, the like parallel track to this is that my dad is a stand-up.
Really?
And, since I was maybe 16, I was seeing him perform, and for a long time he was featuring for Billy Gardell, and I would see the two of them over and over again. So I certainly had an appreciation for it, and I remember thinking that'd be cool if I could do that, but it didn't. I didn't know how you got into it.
So
sure.
You knew what stand-up was.
Oh yeah.
Probably starting in high school.
Okay.
Like I would see people on TV and be funny, and I kind of knew what stand-up was, but I didn't see it as an art until I saw New in Town, John Mulaney's special. That is when I saw comedy as an art. So you grew up with it. You had it. You kind of had it in your veins.
A little bit, and it's interesting because my dad and I are both people who have, a day job writing. And then other, interests and side hustles that are completely unrelated to comedy, but also have, kind of comfortably found ourselves doing stand-up regionally. So, I was exposed to it early on, and I saw a little bit of how people work on it early on. But at the same time, I didn't know how it like I don't think I knew what an open mic was.
That's fun. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I did not know how to even start something like that until a buddy of mine in college said we should do an open mic, and I was like, oh, like a music open,
right?
Because that was the only thing I heard. Like I didn't know a comedy open mic even existed, and then and then Joe brings me into that, and I'm like, oh, you can do this 15 times a fucking week if you want to. Like you could do this so much, and I saw people working on a craft. That's what really made me keep with stand-up. Was like, oh, okay, I see everybody else working on something. That's fun to me. Like people are building art right in front of me.
Yeah. And so you started in college?
I started 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Right at about a year out of school. I started February or April 2017.
And did you go to Pitt?
I went to Pitt. Yeah.
That's become such an incubator.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Man. It's unbelievable. Pitt Tonight started as I was getting back from a study abroad trip.
Okay.
And if I wasn't on that study abroad trip, I would have jumped on Pitt Tonight immediately because I saw people working on an art, people working on a craft, and having a reason to write. You know what I mean? I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm putting myself in positions now where I have to do something weekly, or I have to fulfill quotas for shows because I'm setting up more of my own, and that drives me to be a better writer, drives me to be a better stand-up. I'm envious of people who have like a weekly show on radio. The obvious example I think is SNL too.
Sure.
Those people have to get shit done immediately, right? And there's no time to second guess your work. That's how I write really well. Do you relate to that at all, or are you somebody who wants to not draw your writing out, but take a lot of time, perfect dot your I's and cross your T's?
Closer to that.
Yeah.
It's I don't relate personally. I admire, but I don't relate personally to people who are always writing. That's never been how good stuff, in terms of stand-up, how good stuff comes to me. If I sit down to write stand-up, like I sit down to write an article for the magazine or sit down to write theater, what comes out is not going. It usually doesn't work.
If you sit down,
if I
be
sit,
like, oh, okay, yeah,
yeah. If I sit down to write a stand-up set or to write new material, that doesn't work out that well.
Yeah.
When it's good, it's because I thought of something in the car and hit pause on a podcast and
text.
well,
yeah.
I'm because of the theater background, I memorize almost instantly, so I can kind of just say something to myself 2 or 3 times in the car and go, okay, I'm going to try that tonight, and then I go and do it, and I, it's like, oh, that worked. Okay, that's in the rotation now. That's in the set, and I don't feel like I feel like I'm kind of always chipping away at the 25 to 30 minute set, and so there's stuff in there that has been in there for 7 years, and there's stuff in there that's brand new. More of it is old than is new, but I'm equally interested in improving the 7-year-old thing and the brand new thing.
Oh, that's super interesting.
I kind of want to always be honing the stuff I have. I'm more concerned with honing the stuff I have, even if it's been there forever, than I am with let me get some new stuff.
You're not somebody who has to have a new 5 minutes every month to be satisfied.
No, and part of that is a product of the rooms that I'm doing, because I'm doing a lot of fire halls and a lot of not comedy crowds, just people out for a night on the very small town, where they don't care if it's something new and insightful that I've worked on, or if it's the thing that I've been doing since 2012. It's new to them, and I feel like I should be giving them the funniest stuff I've ever come up with, not the stuff that I care about working on.
Yeah, you're putting on a show. You're not trying out things at different venues. Do you think your act should change based off of the venue that you're at? I was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday where we were watching a woman on stage, very funny, and I'll tell you after, I've seen her jokes work everywhere. Like, they're very funny.
Yeah.
And then we did I did the open mic at the Pittsburgh Improv for the first time yesterday, and it didn't work. None of her stuff worked. And I'm like, motherfucker, this is the question I've been asking for 2 years. Should your set change based off of the venue and the folks that you're telling the jokes to? Do you think it should?
No, I definitely do.
You do? Because there's purists who say your act should work everywhere. Bill Burr is an example for me. He can do any room, and his material works.
Sure, and if you're Bill Burr, and if you're John Mulaney, you're smart and talented enough to do that. I think for 99% of us, we have to, we don't have that thing that makes you so innately funny that it's going to work for whoever you're talking to.
Relatable.
So
to every degree. Yeah.
So, if it's like, oh, this is just a Yinzer crowd, like, that middle-aged Pittsburgh crowd, that's, I've got all of these jokes about the traffic in town and the pirates, and that's all going in there tonight. And then it's, okay, this is one of those crowds that clearly wants me to say dirty words, so anything I can, the little bit I have that's a little bit more blue, that's going in there. Or it's downtown, if it's an arcade or somewhere else like that, and the things that I want to talk about that are a little bit more personal and might be a little bit more of a story, I'm going to do those because I know these people are paying attention in a way that the fire hall crowd isn't.
Agreed. If I'm doing a set at arcade, I almost feel, okay, let me compare it to the arcade and the improv. When I do a weekend at the improv, I almost have to coach the people there, the crowd, to laugh. I have to coach them into this is how a joke is told. It feels like people at arcade understand everything that you say is a joke. It's almost bizarre where at the improv I have to walk them through. This is a setup, joke, punchline. And it feels like I have to walk people through that, and that's not just there either.
Sure,
I do VFW crowds all the time. It also feels like it there because you're right. Those people are just out for a night,
right? And those crowds can be fantastic. You know, especially if you get well outside of town. You know, if you're driving for an hour and a half to get to this little dot on the map. You know, this is the most live entertainment they've encountered in 3 months, 6 months, and they'll really be primed to have a good time. But like you said, if you're going up there cold, they also don't necessarily know what to expect.
Correct.
And this, if you're hosting or going early in the show, they're not necessarily going to be accustomed to what you're doing right away.
Yeah, when I'm hosting, I have to tell a joke that makes them applaud. That's a big one too.
Yeah.
Get them to laugh right away.
Yeah.
I agree with you. What was your first? So Gab got you into stand up.
Yeah.
What was your first experience like?
I just felt like I remember thinking I don't have any business here yet. You know, I knew enough about it where she was doing a show at Duquesne where she had gone to college, and there were people like sitting down for a show. You know, there were, I don't know how 60, 80 people there for like programmed entertainment. It wasn't a couple of people at a bar. It wasn't people, you know, and I was going on after a comic named Tim Diamond, who had been doing it for years and was really funny, and I had this idea that I was like, this could work or it could not, and I already knew enough to earn, like, I haven't earned this spot yet.
Oh, you haven't earned this spot.
So, you know, it was very intimidating, but it also took some of the pressure off because I was like, it's a mistake that I'm here. So if I go out and die, that will just affirm that, yes, this was not what should happen.
So she shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right
and once I explained what the bit was and I kind of went into it, which was just, you know, crowd work and stock critic observations about how movies are bad. Like, it got a couple laughs and I felt fine
satisfied.
about it. Yeah.
Get it.
But I still wanted to find, like, I knew I hadn't found the thing yet. I knew I hadn't found, like, this is why I'm going to show up every week.
I get it, man. I did a show at my old high school. They couldn't find a hypnotist for their after prom. So they said, oh, Nate, you tell jokes.
Right.
Come do, she said, okay, can you do 45 minutes? And I said, yes.
Right.
The problem is
you
I have
25
right now. And that was a year ago.
Yeah.
And first 10 minutes were great. And the 35 minutes it was at 4 a.m. I was the only 30% of the crowd was asleep. I'm not gonna put it on them because I shouldn't have been there.
You can.
They were like coaching me. They were like, "You can do it." I'm like, "Oh, this is the worst."
I dismiss the notion that there are no bad crowds and that you can never put on. Sometimes you can put it on the crowd. Like you don't want to. If you're doing that every show, you have a problem and it's you.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you're like, well, they sucked. I'm not gonna feel bad about that one.
I get it.
That happens.
I get it.
Yeah.
I felt bad for taking their money, but I did.
Oh, absolutely. You're not paid to be funny. You're paid to talk into that microphone for X number of minutes.
Well, here's the thing. They didn't. I asked for a bar stool and a microphone.
Yeah.
Sean, take a guess. The two things they didn't have.
The bar stool and the microphone.
I talked into like a water bottle.
Oh yeah, no, I've done that where they're like, "Hey, we had a mic, but it's not working," and it's like, "Well, I guess I'm going to project."
Like they called the art director who was asleep.
Yeah,
like, "Hey, we can't get this microphone to work. He's going on in like 5 minutes," and he went back to sleep. He did not. He lived a minute away from the high school. Could have come and helped it doesn't matter.
And that was that's where I lean on my theater background, because I can I can use my voice to fill up a room,
Right.
even if it's not amplified. I very, very briefly made a name in Austin, Texas, on one showcase there, because a friend got me a spot, and I went up, and after about 3 minutes the power went out, and I said, no, it's fine, and I just kept going.
You kept going.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen that happen. Derek
Yeah.
Minto,
he
power
can
went
do it.
out. Oh, he did it.
Yeah.
Power went out unplanned, and he rocked it.
Sure.
You have a nice voice, by the way.
Oh, thank
You were on WDVE, right?
Yeah.
You were or are?
I am.
You am.
Every Friday morning.
How did
usually.
that come about? How do you find it?
How do I
How do
enjoy
you
it?
enjoy it? Yeah.
Oh no, I love it. I'm very, very happy to be doing that.
Yeah.
That's also something that my dad did. Not so much anymore, but when I was like 8 years old, he was on the radio, and for a lot of those years, a regular guest on the DVE morning show.
Yeah.
And I wanted that before I knew what I would do on the radio.
Is that true?
I just really liked the idea of talking on the radio.
Did you just want an out for creativity, or was it you just wanted? No judgment, because I'm the same way. Because I understand that. Because when I was young, I just wanted people to hear me. Like that is what it was.
No, it's
still kind of what
a
it
lot
is
of the
for
things
me.
I do boil down to I have an opinion. I'd like people to hear it.
You to hear it.
Yeah, I just loved the idea of talking on the radio, and whatever format that would take. And I also really wanted to be a movie critic. Like the first thing I wanted to be after I didn't want to be an actor anymore was to be a movie critic.
Yeah.
And it was a similar thing where I came home from college, and I noticed that they had somebody calling in to do movie reviews, but it wasn't really working, and you could kind of tell that they didn't like him all that much.
Right.
And I kind of knew those guys, and after a while I just said, hey, I do that. I could probably do that for you.
Right.
And eventually they said, come on in, and thankfully they had the patience to let me figure it out over time.
Oh, that's nice.
And I've been doing that for 10 years now, and I think I wasn't comfortable for the first 3 or 4.
Why?
It was a number of years before I really felt like, okay, I know how this is supposed to go.
Yeah.
That's really hard. Even having I've podcasted for several years now, and done a lot of conversations like this. Having a conversation with multiple people on a terrestrial radio show, and having to make it sound natural and open and funny and off the cuff when it actually has all of these structures wrapped around it is really, really hard to do.
You're still kind of acting though in that sphere, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of acting and a little bit of improv and a little bit of stand-up. It's just a cocktail of those that doesn't really come out anywhere else.
You're right.
Yeah.
And you are also at a time in the day that people don't expect to hear comedy too. Do you think that's true, or am I full of crap on that?
I mean, the morning radio thing has been a big thing for a while.
I am full of crap on that, actually, because I listen to radio in the morning too, on occasion, and I do find myself listening to comedy.
But I think that what people are not expecting is necessarily any thoughtfulness. There's that kind of morning zoo cliche that thinks that that morning radio is this loud, zany like jolt of caffeine
kind of thing too, yeah.
And we're fortunate here in Pittsburgh that the DVE morning show is kind of a pretty thoughtful comedy show, and it's a sports show too. It's a talk show, but there really is a lot going on in terms of we're presenting something that we're really having the conversation, we're really talking, we're really thinking about it, and that I think is an exception.
Are you a sports guy?
No, not really.
Not either. I'm on the same boat as you, pal. Like I try so hard.
Yeah.
And you're in a position that you kind of have to know things that's going on.
My dad is known as a sports writer.
Yeah.
And has been forever. And I'm on the flagship station of the Steelers.
Yeah.
Those are for both of those reasons, people expect me to be a sports guy.
Yeah.
And
well, that was why I asked.
Right. And
that's really.
And there's kind of a thing in Pittsburgh where if you're in Pittsburgh and you have any kind of notoriety, everyone just assumes that you know everything about the Steelers.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot of people, to a lot of people, the concepts of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Steelers are one and the same. So
correct, I agree.
So if you are associated with DVE or one of the news networks or the Post-Gazette or whatever it might be, to them that means you're part of Pittsburgh, which means you're part of the Steelers.
Right.
And so I find myself in a lot of conversations where people just start talking to me about the team, and I kind of checked out on the NFL altogether a couple of years ago because I read enough about head trauma to decide, I don't feel like this is safe at any level.
Concussion?
Yeah.
That made me not want to watch sports ever again. For a brief time, it did. When I looked up a couple years ago worst hockey injuries, never want to watch hockey again. It really doesn't. I don't care. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
But you know what I do like? I like British soccer.
Yeah, that's fun.
I'm a big fan.
Sure.
I'm a big fan.
I like baseball a lot.
Yeah.
I don't, because of the way my schedule is, I don't, find myself watching a lot of games anymore.
Yeah.
If I had nothing to do, I'd probably watch the Pirates every night. I'm a lifelong big pro wrestling fan.
Is that true?
Yeah,
I don't know anything about
but
that
that's
world.
more theater than sports.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's the
exactly
thing.
it. Yeah, that fits in your category more than any other sport, because there is a theatrical component to it.
Yeah.
On the same hand, I feel there's a theatrical component to almost all sports. I went to Steelers Browns this year, and that's the first thing. I was a little drunk, but that was the first thing that I thought when they ran out and they announced the names and everything, and I thought they could, if sports were that, okay, I'm going to say something, you don't have to agree with it, but if sports were that serious, people would just show up, like the players would show up, we would play the game, that's it. No halftime show, nothing. This is a formal thing that's happening.
Well, it would look like a European football game at a lower level where it's not, and I don't know, maybe the Premier League games are like this too, but I remember being at a couple of like lower tier soccer games in Ireland, and there's no adornment to it at all. We wander in, we sit here, and eventually they start playing the game. Yeah.
Completely. I might cut this, but I'm going to tell it to you.
Yeah.
But even the component of cheerleaders,
yeah.
that blows my mind, how that's even still a thing. I can't understand it for the life of me. And people get furious in this city and everywhere else about one particular set of 11, 22 guys on a field, right?
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
I do think at every, especially here, but probably worldwide, we're taking it too seriously, and that's why any sports scandal is allowed to happen.
Huge,
whether being a Penn State guy, having lived through the Jerry Sandusky thing, or whether it is Colin Kaepernick, or even down to steroids and stuff like that. People think this is really important, so we're going to try to get away with something.
Yes.
Or there's a culture around something that people feel they can't mess with, and that allows bad things to happen. We're taking it too seriously. At Penn State, Jerry was...
Were you there during that?
Jerry was around when I was there. He had kind of been phased out, but I was there before that story broke.
You were there before.
So I was there, during an active cover-up, and I had to kind of reckon with, like, on some level, my tuition went to keeping this thing quiet.
Oh, wow.
And if that guy had been doing that at Robert Morris, he'd have been in jail, after forever. It's because someone thought, this is going to be bad for Penn State because football is such a part of Penn State.
Money, dude.
We got to
paper.
we're going to push him out, and we're going to give him some money, and we're going to keep him away from the environment, but we're going to keep this quiet. That's because you have a football culture.
Completely, man.
And I just think I think sports are an integral part of the culture that people take too seriously.
Completely.
Yeah.
I completely understand
Yeah.
that. I'm on the same page with you.
Yeah.
And then I look at it on the third side of the coin where I'm like, I am happy I grew up in a city that collectively cared about something. Together.
Oh, yeah. That's the good part.
I completely get. And I even think of it as I get super pumped for the Olympics, for the World Cup, because we can all come together and root for something.
No,
That's so fun.
I have tremendous memories of being at that first Pirates playoff game in over 20 years, or watching the Pens clinch the cup downtown with my brother. Those are great memories, and that's when it's good. The problem is when you're that interested every day.
Yes. Completely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Anyway.
Thank you.
So no, not really a sports guy.
Well, we're at 40. I appreciate you doing this, man.
Sure,
Thank you very
course.
much. So I'm going to ask, so this is the question that I ask at the very end.
Yeah.
By the way, how are you?
I'm doing good.
In general?
I'm very busy.
Yeah.
This is all of these projects, but
Thank
that's
you.
the way I like it.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
I'm pumped that you're here.
Oh,
I am
thank
very
you.
excited that you're here. So
No,
thank you for doing
I
this.
appreciate being asked.
So I am going to ask you this question I ask every single guest.
Mm-hmm.
Have you listened to any towards the end? I don't give a fuck. Have you listened to any of this?
I apologize to say
No, don't apologize.
that I have not.
I always ask
when I do
want
one,
to know if you know this
when
question.
I do one, it is between 0 and 1 episodes that I listen to beforehand. Unfortunately, it was a busy week, and I
Who
didn't.
did you
think
listen
of it.
to?
What's that?
Who did you listen to?
Of your show? No,
I
I
thought
did.
you meant 0 to 1. Okay,
Zero,
never mind,
zero,
never mind.
of any podcast
How
I'm doing.
dare-
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
kidding.
it's fine.
No, seriously, I just wanted to know if you knew this.
I don't know the question.
I started dating a girl named Monica about a year ago.
Okay.
As we were talking, her friends asked me this question the first night they met me.
Right.
To kind of gauge who I am as a human being.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you this question.
Oh, good.
So, Sean, you are at a bar.
All right.
The night is going bad. There is quicksand in the back that has swallowed up at least 8 Asian couples, right?
This took a turn.
It's bad, yeah. A dart has gone right through somebody's hand. It's a bad night.
Okay.
But it is also karaoke night.
Uh-huh.
And it is your job, your
Yeah.
duty, to save the entire night through song. What song are you singing?
I've done this several times.
That exact scenario.
I've helped rehabilitate several
Really?
bad karaoke nights. And then I go away from what I want to do for my joy. Because for my joy, I want to sing Springsteen, and I particularly want to sing Rosalita because it's going to be 6.5 minutes long, and it's going to be all me. That's what I want to do for my
You're
joy.
selfless.
But if I'm trying to rehabilitate that night, I know that I need to go against the expectations that people will have for me when I walk up there. I have to surprise people, so I'm going to sing Bad Romance.
That's great. I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
The Lady G.
Mm-hmm. And I've done that. As I said, I was part of. I don't want to say it was a bad event because it was for charity and it was well intentioned, but it was supposed to be like a big air quotes celebrity karaoke competition, and it just wasn't going well, and people didn't care, and it and the audience was checking out, and eventually I went up and I said, I really have to lean into Lady Gaga right now, and it rehabilitated it to the point that someone ran into the lighting booth to start adding lighting effects mid-song. I was like,
That's amazing.
Now I've made
You've
it.
had experience.
This is
You're
a
the
career
first
highlight.
guest in 54 or 5 guests who have had experience with this question.
Yeah. I was very prepared for
That's
that one.
amazing.
Yeah.
I listened to Bad Romance on accident a couple days ago. I went to turn
great.
on Paparazzi.
It's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man. Anything you want to plug?
So many things that I won't plug all of them, so I'll pick two that I care about a whole lot right now. One is we just relaunched the podcast. For years it was called You Can't Handle the Truth. Depending on your podcast app, it might still be called that. But officially, it was relaunched as a podcast called The Number One Movie in America. Me, Aaron Kleiber, Camila Adams, and Robin Hitchcock. We are watching old number one movies, old box office number ones at random. So we draw the next one at random at the end of every episode. And I love that, and I'm enjoying that a lot. And my theater company is called Vigilance Theater Group.
Vigilance Theater Group. Find us on Facebook. We our first show was last year. It was fantastic. We'll be back with another one later this summer. And that's the thing that I'm really passionate about right now. If I spelled vigilance right, will you give me $100? Did I spell it right?
No. There are at least 2 errors, and I didn't look that closely.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Thank you so much. You get to sign us off. You get to say anything you'd like. I've had people say inspirational stuff. I've had people be mean. I don't know if I have. You say anything you'd like.
Don't have full conversations when you go to concerts.
Don't have full conversations when you go to concerts.
I care about that a lot.
Do you?
Don't talk loudly to your friend.
That's something somebody who has a lot of opinions would.
Yeah.
And who wants people to know them.
Yeah, I do want people to know that.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.